What's your view of how celebrities can influence public opinion and whether they ought to, and if they can, what ways make sense as a way of educating people in these areas?
You know, celebrities have the same rights as any citizen, anyone who works, you know, at the Lockheed plant, or anybody who's a lawyer, a doctor, or anyone has the right as a citizen to speak out. Fortunately, we all have those rights. There's a responsibility, I think, when you're in the public eye, when you're allowed the megaphone, the microphone, when you're often handed, you know, the microphone to speak, or asked to go up to the podium to speak. I think there's some responsibility to get the very best science before you speak about any subject. Well, I feel like I have gotten it. To just go up on stage now, people say, why don't these actors just shut up? How can you shut up? How can you go on stage and do a song and dance as you're scheduled to do when the fire marshal has just tapped you on the shoulder and said, there's a smoldering mass down in the basement. Don't alarm people. Have them vacate row by row and have them stand out in the parking lot. We don't want to panic people, but please communicate that to them. How could you not pass that on? Well, the fire marshal has talked to us in the form of Nobel laureates and people with PhD after the name. I'm speaking about the Union of Concerned Scientists and others, people like E.O. Wilson and many, many other people who are quite astute. You know, people who I've known. You know, Sherwood Rowland, who won the Nobel Prize, and on, these wonderful, wonderful people who've told us a lot about ozone depletion and many other matters. We should listen to them. We should listen to them on many subjects, and I have, and that's why I speak out about these things. I've researched them and seen a lot of credible science.
Do you think the message is getting through? Do you think people will spend a significant proportion of their time thinking about these issues, trying to resolve them, rather than looking at the latest news about some insignificant personal entertainment business kind of things?
No, I think people are drawn to the sensational, sadly.
Is there a way to make these obviously long-term sensational questions of short-term sensationality so that people will pay attention to them?
People have tried that, then they're criticized for being sensational. When they did the movie The Day After Tomorrow, it was not scientifically accurate in that it couldn't happen in that short period of time. Everything that happened, they theorized it couldn't happen that short
That was an
period of time.
anti-nuclear, it was a mock nuclear.
No, it was a global climate change fantasy, The Day After Tomorrow.
I'm sorry.
And so it was about that, and people decried it because it was sensational in its attempt to get the word out about those potential problems. Well, you know, when you have things that are so dry, people don't listen. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Right. Is there some, would a film version, say, of Out of Gas, written by Dr. Goodstein, who I've interviewed twice at Caltech, who explains the science, explains the options and the situation, that was done in a attractive but not sensational way, so that people would watch it and learn something and move in those directions, be possible, do you think?
I think Out of Gas would be a great attempt, but there's something that I think is quite successful that is neither sensational or too dry. It's called An Inconvenient Truth, and it's a wonderful movie, and I think it gets the message out about these issues in a very clear, scientific manner. And the fortunate thing is nowadays, when all the Rush Limbaughs and the Sean Hannitys and the people say, that's all baloney, folks, we've had these temperature swings for years, and they talk about the science of it, people can go online and go to the NASA site, they can go to the NOAA site, they can go online and just get credible, peer-reviewed studies from Science Magazine, Nature Magazine about global climate change, and they can see what the people who have a degree in these matters say about it. So I would trust, you know, if people would just get interested in, I would trust people just going and seeking out information about it. There's many different opinions on it, but the best science certainly leads to my opinion, which is there is cause for concern, and we can make changes, and it won't make us poor.
In addition to An Inconvenient Truth, there was another film recently along the same lines called Who Killed the Electric Car? Could you recount your experience with the electric car, the EV1 from General Motors, and your involvement in that film?
I'll tell you, I think the movie Who Killed the Electric Car is a very fair representation of the facts surrounding the demise of the EV1. Very fair, because it doesn't point the finger just at General Motors, at the oil companies, at the public, at the battery technology, at the Air Resources Board. It spreads it around. The only suspect, if you will, of all those suspects that I just listed, the only one that gets off the hook is the battery technology. Because when they made that decision to kill the electric car, to essentially kill it, to quite literally kill it, they knew that there was battery technology, lithium-ion batteries and other batteries that would take a vehicle 200 some odd miles. So the only suspect that gets let off the hook and let out on its own recognizance is the battery technology. Everyone else is fairly and rightly, the Air Resources Board, the public, the auto companies, and the oil companies are guilty as charged for doing something or doing nothing and letting the electric car die, or in fact, quite directly killing it.
Speaking of being charging in another way, if you'll pardon the pun, what is the possibility now for electric cars today in 2006, and how much is it being realized? And say something about PHEVs, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles versus pure electrics, and what the situation is in regard to those types of transportation.
I think there'll be a market for pure electric vehicles. I hope there will be. I certainly like my pure electric vehicle that I drive 300 days a year. Another 65 days a year I have to go outside of the range of the electric vehicle, and I take my wife's hybrid when I do that. So we're a two-car family that has complete mobility, complete flexibility and range of motion in our vehicles to get anywhere in the country and outside of the country, in Canada, Mexico, in these vehicles. They do it just more efficiently. There's a company, Tesla, that's taking people's money right now to deliver a car 1 year from now, a very expensive car, high-end car for people who want it. Goes 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. It's a fine car for the very wealthy. There are other cars being made right now, neighborhood electric vehicles, and other cars that are between a neighborhood electric vehicle, that is to say a car that goes 25 miles per hour, does not have very good crash testing at all, and on, between that kind of a very inexpensive vehicle that's, they sell them for 4 grand, some of them 5 grand, 10 grand for a real fancy one. There's going to be a vehicle between that and between the $100,000 sports car that Tesla Motors is making. There's companies that will be making cars like that for the average Joe or Jane to drive who want to, you can't make gasoline in the roof of your house. You can make electricity in the roof of your house. And a lot of people are going to want to do that as energy costs spiral.
Would it make sense if more people had photovoltaic or Stirling engines in their backyards to make electricity and have either a PHEV, a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, or a pure electric vehicle, and if these solar electric generating systems were in all the parking lots that so many people's cars spend so much time baking in the sun without getting any more energy, so that people could get the electricity they need to fuel their car from solar sources, and as you said, have a hybrid to drive longer distances and get most of their needs met through electricity that was generated in a distributed way for them?
I think if there was greater demand for solar panels, really much greater demand, I think the price would drop, as we've seen with DVD players and with video decks back in the day and personal computers and other things that were quite expensive. I would hope the price would go down with greater quantity, and now they're coming up with better technologies for amorphous panels rather than the polycrystalline panels. And certainly you mentioned PHEVs, the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. That's a great and very efficient way to get around. You can plug in your car and you go on electricity much longer than you would go with a traditional hybrid, and then if you want to drive up to San Francisco, you have that freedom to do that in your quote-unquote electric car because it's not fully electric.